Today on the Unholy Bible Study podcast, we are talking about the story of Cain and Abel from Genesis 4.
This is an ancient story from early in the Bible that tells about the very first murder. It's a story about the brutal violence that sometimes happens in families. It's a story about the beginnings of culture in human history. And it asks where God is in these stories of violence. My name's Evan.
My name's Scott.
We're both Baptist pastors, and this is our podcast about the Bible. But you don't have to worry, because we're not trying to save your souls. We won't be telling you what to believe or how to behave, and we promise never to invite you to church. We just like to talk about the Bible, what it actually says, where it probably came from, and how it's been understood or not by different people in different times and places. This is your warning, though, especially if you are or have been a person of faith. For our purposes, the Bible's not a sacred text. During this podcast, we'll be treating the Bible more or less like any other book. While you're here, there is nothing you have to believe. There are no beliefs you can't question, and there are no questions you can't ask. Welcome to the Unholy Bible Study Podcast. Welcome back to the Unholy Bible Study. Scott, do you know how many episodes we've done?
I do not.
Yeah. Our last episode was number 25.
25.
Yeah, which I couldn't believe. I'd kind of lost track of how many we'd done. What have you, what's been one surprise about doing these podcast episodes, or one thing you didn't expect when we started this process?
I would say reflecting on it, I look back and I can see how difficult of a, let me try this again. What am I trying to say?
Are you glad we did it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole looking back, when we first started this, it was a genre of communication I'd never experienced.
Yeah. And you're not like a big podcast listener.
No.
Right?
No. I mean, yeah, I'm a boomer, so but it's interesting. I feel like I'm understanding, nowhere near mastering, but understanding what the podcast,
like what the
culture is about.
Yeah, and how to, what the format is like, what works and what doesn't.
I've watched more. I haven't watched. I've found myself watching more amusing podcasts.
Yeah,
or listening.
You don't think we're amusing?
Well, no, it's just that as I've been exploring, I found these two guys, they taste the worst things ever.
Oh, yeah,
and it's
sure.
And I'm like,
that sounds good.
And they shoot it in their garage, and they have a folding table, and,
Yeah, that sounds great.
They taste gefilte fish, or they try the hottest hot sauce, or, whatever. But anyway, but I see it's a very informal way of approaching something.
Yeah. I think that's what I like about it, and that's what I think is really special about the format is there's something about like a less structured conversation that gets at like I feel like I think through things in a way I couldn't if like we weren't talking together. Like if I was just trying to write, like sermon writing is so solitary. Like you might talk with somebody else about it, but then you've got to get something down on the page or something to say in the pulpit. And it kind of all has to come from you, and it kind of has to all be ready before you step into the, before like you're actually there and ready to go. So I like the preparation for this, knowing that that whatever I think right now is going to evolve as we
Mhm.
talk about it.
I think I approached this more as teaching or
Yeah.
preaching, and I had to like be totally ready to go and have almost a manuscript in my head.
Yeah.
And I see how
It like doesn't work.
well, it doesn't work
as
and,
well.
And
Yeah.
what my friend Jay, our friend Jay, who's producing this, executive producer, we get together once a week, and he, at one point early on, he said, "Scott, just talk like we do when we're having coffee."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, well, I've loved it too, and really enjoyed. It's maybe one of my surprises is how, as soon as I think we're like getting some momentum or really figuring out what our format is, like we've changed so many little things and feel like we've just had to like kind of feel our way forward 1 inch at a time to figure out what works for us. But it feels like as soon as I think we're starting to figure it out, like some new question comes up, or we have an episode where it's just like, why was that so hard? And then we'll have a great episode after that.
It feels like, for me, I still don't feel like I'm settled in how to approach this.
Yeah, I don't think we're, and maybe you're never totally satisfied with a show like this and what the format is, but I do feel like we're still figuring it out one episode at a time. We do have one little change we're gonna try to make moving forward is we got some feedback from a friend of the show and a colleague who'd been listening and had kind things to say about the podcast, but said like, I'm often listening to this in the car and I don't know, you guys are talking about a passage that you've read and you have right in front of you, but I'm driving. I can't really look up what you're talking about. So it would be helpful if you read all of the passage or more of the passage during each episode. So when we talk about a chapter from the Bible, we're going to try to read maybe not the whole thing. We don't want to do just like a long block of reading at the beginning of each episode, but we're going to try to find a way to incorporate more of the actual text from the Bible, like the words that we're seeing in front of us, into each episode. Do you want to talk about Laura's feedback? Friend of the show,
Yes, yeah, that'd
Laura.
be great. Yeah,
we were talking with her a little while ago, and she shared something she wishes we would do. How did she say it? Do you remember?
she said that when we're talking about God said this or told them to do this or whatever, that we assume, or it sounds like we're assuming that it's actually God that's doing all this.
Yeah.
But maybe we should ask the question, or she always asks the question,
did God really actually say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I said to her is that assumption is one that I bring in my own approach to the Bible. I always ask that question. Is this?
Yeah, you just like, and I think I'd kind of do the same thing. I just assume everyone's already asking that question anyway. Mm-hmm. It's one of the first questions, or maybe it's the last question, I'm not sure, that I ask about anything I read from the Bible.
And that question is actually significant for me because I grew up.
The question, did God actually say this?
It was a question you couldn't ask.
Yeah, it was assumed. And I think a lot of people assume, have been taught to assume the same thing or told that they should assume the same thing. If the Bible says God did this or God said that, then that's what God did or God said.
One of the mottos that I grew up with is, God said it, I believe it, that settles it.
Yeah. It's just, I think we've talked about it before. It's like the end of any conversation or any learning you could possibly do. Like, we're just going to leave it right here and not think anymore about it.
And you could make that a really weird principle because there's some really weird things in there.
There are. And
what does it even mean to say I believe it?
Yeah. Well, I know what it meant for I probably know what it meant for whoever said it to you. But that's something I think both of us are going to try to be more mindful of. Remember that we might be taking, like, if we're reading a story from the Bible and it says that God did this, we might just, our habit might be to say, like, the story says God did it, so that's what we have to go with that, at least while we're talking about this chapter. But we'll try to be more mindful, I think, that that we don't know, or we don't necessarily believe or think that God does everything that the Bible says God did. Yeah. Today, are we, any other housekeeping? Anything else we needed to talk about before we kind of get into today's topic?
Well, one thing, I think we're going to take a pause on this particular focus we've had.
Yeah, we've been going through this mini-series for a while now. Don't tell me how long it's been.
At least it feels that way.
Yeah, which it's been great. It's stuff I've thought about but never really focused on. So we've been moving through this mini-series on sacred violence. That's kind of where we started. And then as we've gone through it, our focus is really narrowed. There's so much. The Bible's so violent that you can't really cover all of it in one series.
Sanctioned violence.
You could do 100 podcasts just on violence in the Bible. But I think pretty naturally, we were interested in talking about sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we started with a New Testament passage about the logic of sacrifice and how Jesus' life and death can be thought of as a sacrifice. And then we've been kind of exploring that theme through other stories or other chapters from the Bible. So we've been talking about this for a while, talking about divine violence, especially the violence that God asks for, or which is directed toward God as a sacrifice or as like a ritual act. And I think we've got maybe one or two more topics we want to cover. We want to conclude by looking again at Hebrews 9, but then I think we're going to take a pause on violence and find something more fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm. One thing with this in particular is there was a part of my own journey where it was when I first encountered René Girard, a French anthropologist who's had a lot of influence on how to understand violence, sacred violence. But I read everything I could find on sacrifice, sacred violence. Uh-huh. So this stuff is so like in me.
Yeah. You've thought about it a lot.
That
I think more than I
think
have.
I'm realizing I am unconsciously assuming everybody out there has read all this stuff I've read too, or
sure.
It's just, and I think, at least for me, I feel like I need to be more precise.
Yeah, I think that helps too. This miniseries we've done almost completely just the two of us, just because I've been. My schedule has been really odd the last few months because I've been off work, and it's just been hard to coordinate schedules with guests. But I think it always helps to have guests in the room who can like remind us that we live in these things, have lived with this stuff for years and think about it a lot, but not everybody does. Even people who care a lot about the Bible or think a lot about the Bible or would like to think about the Bible don't necessarily have the background we do.
Also, as far as people commenting, I think it would be very helpful if people have those kinds of insights or questions. Just take a moment and let us know.
Yeah.
Because...
Or criticisms, or
because I would like for us to continue
insults.
To grow. Yeah, I can deal with insults.
I'll let you read them.
What doesn't kill me makes me stronger, right?
Is that true? I'm not sure that's true.
Sticks and stones, right?
Yeah, that's what they told boomers when they were growing up. Today we're talking about, we're going back to the book of Genesis. We've done several chapters from the book of Genesis. I think we've done 4. This might be number 4.
We did Abraham. We did creation, sacrifice of Isaac. Yeah, this will be the 4th, I think.
It's our
4th
the most we focused on any book. Why do you think that is?
These
is it because it's the best?
So...
I think it's because it's the best.
Well, they're they're stories that ask the most fundamental questions, I think.
Yeah,
and
I think that's
they inform
a good way to say it.
The threads of these stories go all the way through.
Yeah. And these, so Genesis, our listeners, some of them probably know it's the first book in the Bible. And I do think so this is the 4th chapter of the Bible, and it's literally about the beginning of things. It's about like one of the first families, supposedly that ever lived in the world, or at least the first family that's named in the Bible. And yeah, I like that, the way you said that it's about some of the deepest, it's responding to some of the deepest questions, or asking some of the deepest questions we have.
When you think about the earliest humans, even before any recorded human history, what was their life like? Well, primitive, first of all. So the Iron Age starts 1300 BC.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, so something like, and so we're probably, these stories may go like closer to the Stone Age, even, definitely the Bronze. But what was it like? They're sitting around fires, living in caves, primitive huts or whatever, and you're looking around at a world that you don't understand. Like, who are we? Why can we talk and none of the other animals talk? They hadn't met a parrot yet,
Do you think life, how much different, if we could travel through time, how much do you think we would have in common with people? Like, forget language, assume we could communicate. Do you think of people 4,000 years ago do you think our experience is broadly similar? Like, is there something recognizable in our humanity, or is it like a whole different species at that point, as you think about all the history and culture that's passed?
So I've been to Egypt twice, and have seen a lot of the archaeological sites. And I remember thinking, man, there's some things about these human beings that were amazingly advanced, like carpentry. I saw a boat that had been found and buried in the desert. I mean, had been used, but the precision.
Yeah, even 5,000 years ago, you have 4,000 years ago, at least, you have fairly advanced cultures. Like, it's not like there wasn't culture. It's not like people weren't smart and hadn't figured out a lot of things. But
then the other side of it is like the superstition kind of aspects of it, and not the things that I don't think knew how to deal with were these questions, right?
Yeah.
Still, what are we? Where do we come from?
Yeah.
We assume that the gods had something to do with it. Well, who are the gods? Well,
but so does that sound similar to you or different? Like, do you think that would be a point of connection? Or do we approach those questions so differently that it would be like speaking a different language?
I think there's some aspects of it that are very similar.
Because I think a part of me thinks like we're still asking in this area, especially like areas of religion or faith or like fundamental questions. I'm not convinced we've really advanced that much further. Like,
right.
It's I'm not sure advance is even a word that makes sense. Like, these are questions no generation learns more than any others. We just keep circling around the same things in the same ways with slightly different words.
And this is only with human beings that have written stuff.
Yeah.
Right. That's we have the whole prehistory of human beings that we don't really know. We know they drew some things on caves. We knew, they discovered fire. Which
is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty good discovery.
But yeah, what would it have been like in this prehistoric, before human history had been written, or, yeah, ancient human beings. It's just,
Yeah. I think it's one of the questions I ask whenever I read stories in the Bible and try to think about like the actual people behind them, either the people who first told the stories or wrote them down, or even the people who like feature as characters in the stories. I think there's always this question of like, what do I have in common with this person?
mm-hmm.
Did they think of the world more or less the way that I do? Or is there a gap between us that I can't even imagine myself across?
Well, here's an obvious gap. We have electricity. We have lights.
Sure.
The ancients didn't have any of that. So what do they do at night? Well, they're not distracted by artificial light.
Yeah.
They're like, I mean, I have seen the Milky Way when I'm far away from lights, and it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And they noticed that there were some stars that wandered the planets, and there are others that were fixed. They don't understand any of that stuff, and they assume, well, those must be the gods up there.
Yeah, and there's definitely like I'm always kind of two minds about it. Like I can see, yes, like you can talk about advances, and certainly we know a lot more about the world around us and how it works than people used to. And those are real. Like that's real hard-won knowledge that's accumulated and that I benefit from in so many ways.
And as that knowledge was discovered, somebody like Copernicus, what happens when they say
everybody's chill, everybody's cool about it, nobody?
Oh, you don't get called a heretic.
Nobody's defensive. Yeah, it's just you learn more and now
it's
you know.
It's amazing how the religious mind is allergic to advancement, I think.
Yeah, or to any. Well, it's so. I don't know why. I don't totally know why religious people weigh in on questions like the physical structure of the universe. They're hard questions to answer from a religious perspective, and easier questions to answer once you've got a telescope that works. So, I think in some ways you've got religion trying to answer questions it can't answer, and maybe that's what we're still doing in ways I can't quite see.
I think that was probably why a lot of unreligious folks look at religious folks with puzzlement.
Yeah, I think you're probably right because they seem to be using, like, what's the analogy? Like they've got a hammer, and so everything looks like a nail. Like they're using the wrong tool for maybe the right job or something.
And the story we're looking at here,
we
it's
should
got
talk
to be
about
an ancient story.
It feels like it. That's what I like about it. So what do people need to know? This is early in the book of Genesis. We've talked about one of the creation stories. So this takes place very soon after God has created everything that is, including human beings. And there are two human beings. We're told of two human beings that God creates, Adam and Eve, who are the only named human beings, at least at this point. They start out life in a garden, but because is it fair to say because they disobey God, they get kicked out of the garden and have to live in the real world. And that's kind of where this story picks up. What happens? What
question: how old were Adam and Eve at the moment they were created? Did God create them as adults, or did He start them out as infants?
It doesn't say. What do you imagine? Yeah,
they sound like teenagers.
They do kind of act like teenagers. That's a good point. Did you ever hear that? Has anybody ever asked you, like, did Adam and Eve have belly buttons?
Yeah.
Have you heard this? Like, there's you will. If you see Adam and Eve depicted, especially some people will make a point of not putting a belly button on them because they supposedly were made by handcrafted by God out of the dirt. So why would they have a belly button if they were never carried in utero? Yeah. Do you think they have belly buttons?
I don't know. I've never. I've heard that question, but it's just not been an important one for me.
You care about.
Yeah. It seems irrelevant to the larger story. Yeah. No, it isn't. It is fascinating. I think most people, when they think God created Adam and Eve, they just in their minds think of these adults that just appear out of nowhere.
Because they can talk and they can do things. So at least teenagers. Yeah, I've never seen them depicted as children, which is interesting. I've never seen them depicted as children. I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask the question. I guess because it's a nonsensical question. Like, if God just made two babies,
it is fascinating because it's the young child that's the innocent one, right? That's hasn't been tainted yet,
right?
And then there's this point in all, that all of us have experienced where all of a sudden we become aware, and it is painful. At least it was for me. I remember telling my mom, I do not like growing up. This is hard. Becoming more conscious. And I think a lot of, at least from a rabbinic perspective, I think they see it dealing with those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the movement. Like, the Bible doesn't really explain, there's not a topic sentence, and it doesn't interpret the story it tells, at least not much. But I do think it's the story of Adam and Eve is a story of growing awareness. And maybe the word innocence I don't think is used, but I think it's fair to say that that's what this story is about. It's about, certainly the word knowledge is used. Like, they are becoming more aware of the world. They're becoming, they're learning more about the world, and it's uncomfortable. Like, they are losing that innocence. They are growing up. And this chapter that we're looking at today, which is Genesis 4, kind of continues that story. Maybe escalates it. Like, it kind of goes from 0 to 100 miles per hour in just a few verses.
And again, I think all of these stories, these primitive stories in Genesis, they're getting at the kinds of things these ancients probably wondered about as they're sitting around the fire. In this case, we have the first murder, right?
Right.
And
let's read.
Yeah.
Let's read that first section.
Okay.
And then we can keep talking more.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to read it?
Sure, that's fine.
I'll read it. It says, "Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, 'I've produced a man with the help of the Lord.' Next, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought of the firstlings of his flock their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, and you must master it.'"
Boy, it's so obvious. I don't see what we need to say beyond this, right?
It's all very clear and makes a ton of sense. Yeah. You were saying this feels to you like one of those kind of primal question texts, because and I do think it's about, so here, like, we jump right into the relationship between human beings and God, and already, like, we're making sacrifices. So I think this is, what else do you see there? Like, what primal questions do you think this is responding to? Or what question might this story answer if you were sitting around a fire and telling it?
Well, we have. It's interesting. So we would say that we know about hunters and gatherers, and then people that farmed, right?
Yep.
That and
Which we've just skipped over completely in the story of the Bible. Like we go straight from the garden where God had planted everything to Cain and Abel, who are cultivating crops, either plants or animals.
But they're two completely different, I guess, occupations or whatever you want to call it.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, they're both farmers,
right?
But it is, I hadn't even thought about it. It's about like vocation. It's about food. It's about how you make your living,
which shows up at the very end of this chapter. When there's other trades mentioned, and who was responsible for them, but it's I see this ancient setting. I can, in my mind, I'm envisioning West Virginia where I grew up in the hills, but seeing farms, seeing cattle, seeing sheep, goats, whatever, but then also seeing, where in the valleys, growing corn or whatever. But it's their brothers and something.
You've got like the first family, the primordial family dynamics,
and we've got this business where one brother is somehow blessed or accepted, the other one isn't. Why do people feel like that? We have the concept called the black sheep of the family. That's how I sort of see Cain. The one who doesn't turn out right. And I mean, I can think of my own family. There are certain family members that just, I don't know. They.
Do you want to name them?
I do not, but
I'll just take it.
Yeah, my son, he's the black sheep of our family. Yeah, no, but it's why are some family members not fully embraced? And I imagine it's dealing with that question. It's Cain felt like he wasn't accepted somehow. We're not told. I mean, today we would be asking all kinds of psychological questions. We'd say go to counseling. You need to get to know yourself. But it's dealing with just basic human problems that we all have.
I think I put this one on the schedule. We've talked about this. We knew we were going to talk about this chapter in this miniseries. But we've talked directly about sacrifice and the act of sacrifice and how later generations approached it or what they thought about it or how they understood it. But I knew I wanted to talk about the very first sacrifice, the first time sacrifice appears in the Bible, meaning that these two brothers at the very beginning of history, kind of before almost anything else has happened, they bring stuff they've produced on their farms by the work of their hands and offer it to God.
But there's a difference, and the difference isn't in what they offer in terms of animal versus plant, but it's Abel gives his firstling his best.
It does say the first,
but Cain just brings some stuff that he grew. It's not anything set aside. He brings some produce.
Yeah, it doesn't say it's bad though.
No, but there is this sense that Cain's off.
It would just be one more word that could have told us why God doesn't
Cain
want this
offers
offering.
The most costly, the most valuable.
Yeah, so the idea, it's the firstlings. That means they're the first ones that are born, and he has no guarantee that there will be more. Is that the idea? That these sheep have just been born. I hope there will be more, but I'm giving these to God. Like these will be my offering to God.
Yeah. Versus, oh, but I gotta find something to sacrifice. What can I give? You know, well, I have some corn in that silo. I'll just go grab some of that.
Yeah. One of the, like, you kind of gestured toward all the different questions this story seems to be wrestling with, or maybe emerges from people asking these different questions about, like, why are our families like this? Why do I feel this way? What do we owe to God? Like, there are all these big questions asked. I don't think this story answers a single one of them. And there are one of the things that I'd noticed and kind of like, but I think is kind of frustrating about this chapter, is there are multiple times when when God asks a question that is not answered. Or someone asks a question to God, which is not answered. So I think it's kind of funny that all these big questions are swirling around, some of them literally asked in the text, and no actual coherent answers are provided to any of them.
And it's interesting for those who don't come out of the church, well, actually for those who do, even our English translations fill in a lot of stuff that isn't in the original text. Whole phrases that are supplied that are just not there in the Hebrew text to help make sense of it. But yet to do that, you're making a decision. You're assuming you know what's supposed to go there.
Yeah. So maybe before we take a break, what's your history with this text? Is this one that you heard growing up? What what has this meant to people? Or what are some of the how has this story been understood, either in churches you've been a part of or things you've overheard? Have you preached on this one?
If it shows up in the lectionary cycle, I can't remember.
I'm not sure if it does. Surely it does, but I don't think I've ever preached on it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure through my preaching life,
it must. It has to be there somewhere.
I've preached close to 2,000 sermons in my life, probably more. And I preached through the entire lectionary, covered every reading in the lectionary. So if it's in there, I did. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember that Abel was always used as a foreshadowing of Jesus.
Yes. Why?
The whole animal sacrifice and then his blood crying out.
Yeah. So like he's a shepherd, which is a vocation that's associated with Jesus, even though Jesus wasn't a shepherd. There's the idea that he was killed even though he was innocent, right? Yeah. The fact that he brought lambs to sacrifice to God. Christians have usually read this story as kind of an allegory or a foreshadowing of the story
like
of Jesus.
You said, not just a lamb, the firstling, the very first birth of the season, and without a guarantee there will be others.
Yeah, I think
there's
maybe
a costliness, a preciousness
for
about
Christians. This has been like explanatory of like what God wants. Like this story supports the idea that God needs something good to bleed.
And
or
then
to
God
die.
offers his firstling, God's firstling, right?
Right.
God's firstborn is sacrificed. At least that's the way this story was used to help me understand what Jesus was all about.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Is there anything though that's redemptive about this, or is there anything that's supposed to be like Abel's just dead?
Right.
Which we haven't read that part yet, but spoiler alert, like he dies.
The thing that's striking to me is that Cain doesn't get a death sentence. That's the odd thing about this story.
Yeah, it's
because the way violence works, both for us and the ancients, is it tends to be circular, right? It just reinforces itself.
Right.
Somebody kills. I mean, I grew up in West Virginia, Hatfields and McCoys, and that feud went on forever.
Yeah.
And it's just this natural human impulse, but God doesn't respond to Cain that way in kind.
Yeah.
It protects him, actually.
Yeah. So in this story, this conflict is set up between first off between Cain and God, but then Cain is angry at Abel, and Cain kills Abel. That's the story. It's the first murder. It's the first act of violence by one human being against another, one brother against another, recorded in the Bible. The rest of the chapter kind of deals with the aftermath of that, and but that's the action that's recorded in this chapter. But I do think
and as far as the murder, it's just the Hebrew word here is violent murder, or utter.
He murdered him hard,
right? It's
he's very dead.
It's like in a true crime show. Well, she was stabbed 28 times. Well, it had to be someone close.
Yeah.
Why is it that the extreme violence happens with those who are closest?
Yeah, it's like it's depicted as this brutal act. I mean, it is like. I know people joke about family relationships, but can you actually imagine like killing someone you've spent this much time with? Like it's a horrifying thing to consider.
That still happens.
It does happen, but I think that's the kind of the primal question that the text really is wrestling with, like you said. Like this, if you really think about this, it might not sound that surprising because we hear about things like this all the time. But think about what awful things human beings do to each other. Like I think I've heard this story talked about as it's the consequences of sin. Like it's one of fairly few times when the word sin is used in the book of Genesis. This idea that that the evil things human beings do are now loose in the world, and because of that, brutal violence like this happens. Like unspeakable things are done because human beings have grown up or fallen from their state of innocence and grace. But one of the curious things to me about this story is that I don't think it follows. So Christians have often looked back to this, like you said, as kind of a foreshadowing of the story of Jesus and an explanation maybe of how God thinks about sin and what God needs to repair the sin that human beings do. But the logic of this whole story is not very Christian.
Well, it's totally unfair. My Hebrew Bible professor made it clear. You're not understanding these stories if you're interpreting them through your Christian faith. You have to interpret them in their context. And it has to be asking different questions than we would ask about Jesus and his death. These are like fundamental, ancient questions.
Yeah. And like you said, and we'll talk a little bit more and go through a little bit more of the chapter, but a Christian reader thousands of years later might expect, well, Cain killed somebody and his life is forfeit. Like if he owes anything to God, it's his whole life, because he's a sinner, he's a murderer. But the redemption in this story is that God protects Cain, maybe protects him. I can't tell if it's like there's a punishment and a protection. Like Cain is banished because of this awful thing he did.
Banished from the land.
Yeah, which
that was
what
his
does that
source
mean?
first
from his land.
Yeah, from
right?
fertile land.
Like he's not allowed to farm anymore?
Well,
is that the idea?
It's the idea, I think, is that he's out there
I think
in the wilderness
it
where you
meant
can't grow
for
anything.
the rest of his life, he floated about 2 feet off the ground.
Well,
and
no,
he couldn't
that's
touch.
Back to the Future.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And
I knew I was getting it confused with something.
Marty Fly and his hoverboard, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like he's banished from this fertile.
Because he's like, how am I going to survive?
Yeah, and anybody who sees me is going to kill me.
I'm a farmer.
That's
You're banishing me from fertile land. I'm not going to survive that. Plus,
anyone who
all these
sees
people.
Me
who are all the people?
Well, we're going to talk about it. Yeah. Because a lot of people have this question. Anyway, Cain does say, like, anybody who sees me is going to kill me. And
Even though there are only 3 of us so far.
I think it's a kindness that God does to mark Cain, and in such a way that everyone who sees him knows that he can't be killed. Like he's under God's protection, even though he's been banished from the land. It's a weird story that raises more questions than it answers. Let's play Take It or Leave It, and then take a break.
This is a take it for me.
And if anybody doesn't know, I should probably explain. Take It or Leave It is what it sounds like. It's a game we play each episode. We decide for ourselves this chapter, if we were constructing our own Bible, would we take it and keep this chapter in our Bible, or would we leave it behind and never have to read it again? You're a take it.
And I'm a take it because I think the way that I would use this today is to help people see that these questions have been asked as long as humans have been around. Why are we like we are? Why are the worst arguments I've ever had where I've felt violence rise up within me have been with my wife or my kids?
Yeah.
Why are my worst, I haven't had an argument like that with you. Why not?
Yet.
Why does it happen within the family?
Yeah. I think you've got to record 100 episodes with someone before you can have that big a fight. So you're a take it.
Yeah.
I'm a take it to my only misgivings about this passage for lots of the same reasons. I think it's a powerful story. It's a resonant story. Like, I think it still feels really relevant to the world we live in. Like, there's nothing here that I'm reading thinking like, what? Like, why is this here? Like, why did they keep it? Why did anybody think this was worth writing down? My only misgivings might be around the kind of the confusion at the beginning over these sacrifices that, and we can talk about it. Like, I'm not sure, did God want these sacrifices? God doesn't ask for them. Cain and Abel just decide to offer them, but then God likes one and not the other. It's kind of confusing. It's not totally clear why, but mostly God in this story seems pretty reasonable to me. And like the kind of God, you can work with, or that you can, that doesn't raise really troubling possibilities. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, I take this one too. I think it's a cool story, and we will talk a little bit more about it when we come back. Do you want to read the next section?
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah, I'm going to start with 8. I'm going to make a couple of comments language-wise as I go.
Sure.
That works. So I'm starting with verse 8 here. Cain said to his brother Abel, in the Hebrew, that's all there is.
The dialogue isn't there.
No. It's more like, and Cain talks to his brother Abel. In this translation, it says, let us go out to the field. That is not in the text.
Yeah.
And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. The verb here, there's different verbs for kill. This is the most violent kind of a murder. It's like annihilating, rage killing. It's there's incredible malice associated with it.
You really killed him.
He really killed him hard. And then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" He said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And that word keeper is associated with shepherding. So am I the shepherd of my brother the shepherd is kind of the implication. And it's very snarky sounding. And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." So God heard something. What did God hear? The word there is a scream. Somebody suffering a violent crime and how they scream and cry and yell.
Is this
help.
the first rhetorical question in the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
God asking a question God clearly already knew the answer to? Yeah.
And then the next thing, and now you are cursed from the ground. It's the curse is actually more like, this is the end of your livelihood. You're not going to have any land to farm anymore. Which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So where does he kill him? In his own fields.
In the fields. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And his own fields have been watered with his brother's blood. There's like ironies that
so visceral, so gross.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's like a true crime show, you know.
Yeah.
Crime scene photos. It with words and the way they tell the stories, they're communicating. It's just rich. You hear that word scream, and it conjures up images in your mind, you know.
Yeah.
So when you till the ground, it will no longer yield you its strength. You will be a fugitive and wanderer on the earth. And Cain said, "My punishment is greater than I can bear." He's complaining. "Today you have driven me away from the soil or the land, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me." And then the Lord said, "Not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance." And the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. And Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. The land of Nod.
East of Eden. A Steinbeck book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you make? So I'm fascinated, and maybe I don't think we've talked about it. I don't think we've talked about it at all. I don't think we've talked about it on the episode or even before. Cain is the farmer,
Mm-hmm.
like the farmer of crops. Like there's something to me that's confusing, and I do think it matters, but I don't know what the story is trying to say. Like the blood that Cain spills is his brother's blood, and the fact that it happens in the fields where he plants his crops, like where he lives his very peaceful, kind of pastoral, idyllic life. I guess Cain or Abel is more pastoral than Cain, but there's something about like Abel's is the first act of violence. Abel is actually the first killer in the Bible. I'm not wrong about that, right?
You're not wrong.
The first person who sheds blood is Abel. He kills his sheep as a sacrifice, not to eat them or to eat part of them, and as a sacrifice to God. What are we supposed to take away about violence? Like, what do you think this story is trying to say about bloodshed itself? Is killing an animal fundamentally different than killing a person?
You know, I think of that question. I think of like what I've seen with Native Americans, indigenous tribes, and in ancient tribes. When you kill an animal, you have this incredible. You thank the animal for its life. because it's giving you sustenance. There's this almost a sacredness. This is a big deal that I had to take a life so I can have food, versus what Cain did. They both shed blood. One is there's a sense of worship about it, a sense of, it's sacred.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah, sure.
But what Cain did, it was purely driven by
just senseless and angry.
Right. Senseless violence.
Yeah. And he tries to pretend like it didn't happen. Like he's...
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I didn't do it. And again, it sounds like a true crime show, Yeah.
So there's this sense that it's not like maybe killing an animal is just fundamentally different than killing a person, at least in this story. Maybe it's the context in which, like, maybe we're seeing Abel killed something the right way. Like, if you got to kill it, you do it carefully and thoughtfully and prayerfully, not out of rage the way Cain does.
You just brought up a memory. I remember the first time that I was with my grandfather when he slaughtered a head of beef.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was there for the whole process.
How old were you?
Whenever I was old enough to be a part of it, I don't.
Yeah, but I don't know how old.
I don't know. I don't remember. I'm thinking.
What is that? 45?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure I'm there yet.
I don't know what the age of butchering is in West Virginia.
Like,
but
so were you elementary school, middle school, or high school?
I'm thinking 12-ish. Okay.
Sure.
But I remember from first to last, the entire thing was horrifying to me.
Yeah.
I mean, he shot the cow in the forehead with a pistol. That, and then watching the animal flail on the ground and then hanging it up by its feet and cutting open the abdomen and the organs spilling out. I mean, the whole thing. I had nightmares. For weeks, I had nightmares about this experience. So it is violence. There is something awful about it.
Yeah, it's hard to... I think most people acknowledge that it's hard to kill they should be hard to kill anything. Especially like with your bare hands, like viscerally up close like that.
So yeah, it's getting, I think, at a lot of things. They're realizing, first of all, violence. You have to do violence to survive, right? I mean, hunter gatherers.
Cain didn't.
Right.
Cain was fine.
Right.
Cain, I think that's what's confusing, and I think
he didn't,
Rene Girard
he didn't do
makes
the violent,
much of this. The fact that Cain's sacrifice is peaceful, Cain's life is peaceful, but that violence had to have an outlet somewhere, and so like Abel might not have been any less angry than Cain, but Abel already had something to kill. And because Cain didn't have an appropriate outlet or like a surrogate outlet for that rage, it all lands right on Abel.
And that rage component of this, I think, is significant. It is the most extreme kind of rage that led to this murder.
Yeah, it's like horrible jealousy, right?
It's you could say like he wiped Abel from the face of the earth. It's that like disappearing someone.
Yeah. There was something. Oh, the idea. I know we wanted to highlight the idea that Cain is banished because of what he's done, but he's not killed. God doesn't punish Abel's murder with Cain's death, which is it surprising in the story? Like, would you expect?
No, because the same God who's the lawgiver prescribes death penalties for all sorts of things.
Right.
And in this case, God,
Yeah, we know like later.
he doesn't even commute a sentence. He doesn't even grant a pardon. He just, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to kill you, but I'm going to make it hard on you.
It does become hard. So Cain is banished from his livelihood, and now he's just going to wander around the world.
And this has echoes of Adam and Eve, right? Being banished from the garden.
Yeah, definitely.
So
It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same story again, but heightened, maybe.
the sin is
escalated.
different.
The sin is different. It's the original sins are not violent at all, and this one is horrific. But then God kind of ends up threatening anyone else who might threaten Cain. So, like, Cain somehow is still under God's protection.
I'd love to know what that mark was.
Well, there are lots of there's a history of racist interpretations of this passage. The idea that the mark, you don't have to look far to find somebody who will claim that the mark God put on Cain was dark skin, and that dark skin, there is a mark of inferiority and like a sinful nature. Like this story was used to justify slavery and colonialism.
But that it's supposed to mean you're protected.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
I'm not saying it makes sense.
Right. There's another reading that the mark was a dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've not heard that.
A protector.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So not like a literal dog, not like a tattoo of a dog.
Well, and then tattoo is another reading too.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, like a tattoo or a
But there's a linguistic reason that I don't recall why some scholars have said it could be a
dog.
an
That's
animal.
interesting. Yeah. Well, let's read this next.
And wouldn't that be ironic? Cain, who was the guy that had a farm, who killed his brother, who offered a sacrificed animal, gets an animal,
Gets the first pet.
gets the animal to protect him. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Oh, if you come across who said that, I want to read it, or hear it, because that is really interesting. There's some symmetry there that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, and this passage has a lot of symmetry as well. A lot of what we call chiastic symmetry.
Chiasm is it
X.
refers to the shape of an X,
Right.
So it's when things are kind of arranged symmetrically, like a particular word
Right.
used twice, one on either
And
side of
that shows up a lot too,
act.
which it's hard to pick up on that in English, but
Yeah, you see those things much more in the original languages.
But that question you asked, though, I think is an important one. Why is God in this passage, one of the earliest stories, right? Why doesn't God take Cain's life as punishment? Adam and
so,
Eve aren't
Like God changes the rules sometime after
Yeah.
the story, makes
and
new rules.
Yeah.
But also, God isn't usually, we think about the laws that are given later, which God prescribes, but God is not usually the one enforcing the laws. So, like, God here but God's not really standing back or standing above. Like, God's right in the mix with these two guys.
Having flat out conversations.
Yeah, it's a very strange relationship between God and these two dudes. Like, there's no explanation for why Cain's offering is rejected and Abel's is accepted. Like, maybe it's the kind of offering, maybe Cain's offering was inferior in some way. There's no, where's the other? We don't know what Abel said to Cain. Like, there's a blank in this story, like between they go out into the field
Well, we don't
and
know
then
how
Cain kills him.
What was the evidence that Cain's was accepted, and
Yeah, how did they know? Like,
so here's a theory that I just came maybe Abel was doing pretty well, but
Oh,
maybe it was
sure.
a hard year crop wise,
Sure. Yeah.
and maybe Cain felt cursed
Yeah.
because the crops weren't doing well,
Sure.
and he
Could
was
be.
angry because his brother was successful. Which there's never any sibling jealousy, is there?
No, never.
Never.
Yeah. I wonder if that even does make some sense out of what God supposedly says to Cain. Like, why are you angry about this? Like, if you do well, things will go well. If you don't, they won't. It's so confusing. The way God talks about sin, the way God talks
it is
to
a
these guys.
densely packed story. It's so hard. Hebrew is a very not dense language, but it's a economical language, right?
Right.
So
And this kind of story tends to be dense that way. Folk tales, myths, ancient stories tend to, like, every word matters, and there's a lot that's left out. Like, it's an economical form of storytelling.
and they're not meant to answer the questions as much as they're meant to help us ponder the questions.
Well, I wish they would answer at least a few more of the questions.
Like what?
Like what's going on and what how is God talking to them? That's what I want to know. Is like what am I supposed to envision when Abel's offering is accepted? Like, what does that mean? That's the question I want to answer. But I want to read a little bit more of this because we've got one of the other. Maybe it's a silly question, but a lot of people ask it. The next verse, starting in 17, says that Cain knew his wife, who has not been mentioned.
Where'd he get her from?
No one knows.
He's sent off into the wilderness all by himself.
It's
and
extremely
he
confusing.
finds a woman somewhere.
This is where we realize that they are not the only people in the world. No other people have been mentioned, but there's at least enough people that Cain has a wife. They sleep together, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and named it Enoch after his son, Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mahajael. And I'm not going to read all these names.
But
do you want to mention
Methuselah?
Methuselah?
Yeah.
He's the father of Lamech. Lamech took
Some
two
of these
wives.
names show up a little bit later. Like there's a lot about these ancient names, and Methuselah. There's a sense that this might be a reference. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Lamech gets two wives. They have names. Apparently, the name of one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. Ada bore Jabal, and he was the ancestor of those who live in tents and have livestock. His brother's name.
He played the lyre and pipe too.
Was No, that's his brother.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's his brother Jubal. I was about to read that. He was the ancestor of all those who played the lyre and pipe. Zillah bore Tubal-Cain, who made all kinds of bronze and iron tools. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. There's a little poem at the end of the chapter. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I've killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 77-fold.
Oh, yeah, that's real obvious.
We can maybe talk about what that means. Adam knew his wife again, it says, so we kind of shift perspectives back to Adam's generation. And she bore a son and named him Seth. For she said, God has appointed to me another child instead of Abel because Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, and he named him Enosh. Not a word about who Seth's wife was, but at that time, it says people began to invoke the name of the Lord. Which again is confusing because they've been talking to the Lord this whole for the last 4 chapters and throughout this chapter, but only at the beginning, only at the end of this story does it say people begin to
one
invoke
reading
the
of that
name.
is the began to invoke the name of the Lord, it's the beginning of worship in human history, the beginning of religion.
But they've already giving sacrifices, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like I do
you're
think
asking. I mean, this is the problem with these stories. They're not history.
no, certainly.
They're more akin to what we might call fables, or
Yeah.
they.
And you might expect them to have some internal logic or coherence, but they don't always. Yeah. I do think you're right. I think this whole story is about the emergence of religion and culture. Like you've got those lists. This is not just a list of, this isn't just a genealogy where everybody's fathers and sons and mothers are named.
The first city planner. Right?
Yeah, you've got the history of cities, of kind of nomadic civilization. You've got the history of vocations and metalworking and art and culture. So I do think
religion. That's the
and
way
religion
I
is caught up in that. I think you're right.
Yeah.
So I think it's totally fascinating that the first murder leads directly to the emergence of culture. Like it's not Abel doesn't have descendants, and it's not Seth's descendants who create human culture and flourish in these ways. It's Cain's. That's never really explained. It's just kind of a thread that's left there dangling. And I think I can't remember if
all this stuff comes from Cain. Meanwhile, what's going on back at the ranch with Adam and Eve and Seth?
Yeah,
like what are they
Seth's
doing?
Lineage. I think we shift our focus back to that branch of the family. But like the world they live in is Cain's world.
But human civilization, comes from Cain.
Everything we like came from Cain, which is feels like it doesn't feel wrong, but it does feel like kind of a cynical story.
Yeah, I'm very thankful for Jubal, because without Jubal, there would not have been
Which one?
Led
Did he do
Zeppelin.
tenths?
He was the
Oh no, he did the
he was
flute
the
and the lyre.
songwriter.
Yeah. Shoot. What else is here? What haven't we talked about? We've talked about a lot.
For me, the thing, I think this is a great story to point out, not so much that the Bible has contradictions, but why the stories in history vary. Here God protects a murderer, doesn't, but then why in the law is capital punishment prescribed in certain cases? It raises so many questions. Like maybe God, what kind of God seems to have so many different personalities?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. And we don't have a name for this segment yet. We should try to come up with a cool name. But I think the question we want to ask is, did God say this? Like, is this story, whose perspective is captured here? Do you think of this as coming from God or capturing something about God? Or is this Cain's descendants trying to make sense of him? Is it
in all
Seth's?
the ancient cultures, the gods are portrayed in human form, right? And gods and humans are constantly in communication. So it's just part of the way people thought, we have movies, that deal with some of these things. Maybe the stories about the gods were the way they tried to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
So use, these conversations with God. I think they're a form of storytelling that wasn't ever meant to be literal.
Sure. Who is this story sympathetic to? Like, who's the best character, or like, who are we supposed to identify with? Yeah, maybe that's the question.
I think it depends on who you are. There are some people that are going to identify with Abel, right? Victims of abuse.
Yeah, I was
Why
going to
did
make a
this
joke,
happen to
but I'm
me?
not going to make it anymore.
Pardon?
I was going to make a joke, but I didn't know that was the direction you were going.
Oh,
Yeah, no, that's a really good.
right.
Yeah.
And
how
and
does
what does I mean? Let's an abuser that doesn't kill the person they're
Sure.
abusing, it's still they're killed in a way, right?
Yeah,
And so they're
they're victims. Sure.
Victims are going to identify with Abel.
And I do think there's at least a few scholars. We talked about this before, but I don't think we've said it on mic. Back in verse 7, when God is talking about sin and refers to sin lurking at Cain's door, it says there's a strange word that's used, which is desire or urge, like sin is desiring Cain and waiting there to attack him. And at least some scholars have seen the specter of sexual violence there, or even kind of an allusion to rape. And I think there's something to that as you talk about identifying with the victims of this horrible act of violence. I wonder if that's one of the reasons this story kind of alludes toward a very common but totally awful form of violence that which victimizes people, still victimizes people.
That we try to hide from, right?
Which is almost, I think it's the kind you can't even say out loud. Like you can acknowledge that brothers kill brothers, but there's often a tendency to ignore or paper over, cover up violence against women. I think the story is sympathetic to Cain, though. Like, I think that's there. And I think we're supposed to be angry about what Cain did. Like, I don't think it's presented as a good thing or an acceptable thing. But I do think, like, this feels like the story Cain's ancestors would tell. Like, if in their moments of honesty, like, yeah, our ancestor did a horrible thing, and we can acknowledge that, and did a horrible thing for no good reason. But look at all the, I mean, how common is that story? Like, look at all the good he did.
King David, right? The murderer.
Like, look at everything we have because of him. So it feels like there's this honest reflection on Cain's shortcomings, but also this sense of like, this is where our culture started.
Does one bad act define who a person is?
Yeah. In the case of Cain, yes, for the most part.
Yeah.
But not from, I mean, that's the part of this story that no one ever talks about and that is kind of forgotten. But that's where the story ends, with the flourishing of human culture. It's crazy.
And again, the particular kind of violence here, this is family violence.
Right.
Which, that's often the most brutal kind of violence, right? And that's gotta be a question people ask, like, why are we more inclined to kill the ones we love? It's
a mystery.
Yeah.
I think.
Why would a father...
Well, why do people kill? Yes, especially why do we kill the ones we're closest to? But why do people kill anyway? Like, this is a thing that happens in the natural world, but not because animals don't get angry at each other and tear them. Like, an animal doesn't tear another animal to pieces, especially not an animal of its own species, just because it's angry. Like, that's not a thing that happens outside of human culture. So it is. I mean, I think that's the question this chapter would like to ask and absolutely cannot answer.
I mean,
but maybe it's God's fault.
There have been so many stories of a parent who's killed their own children, right?
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the most awful, awful things. And those things have been going on throughout human history. And why? Why do we do those things? Why don't we advance beyond this? And that doesn't even touch on war
No, that's another miniseries.
or
We'll have to come
interreligious
back to it.
violence, you know.
Any final thoughts? Anything we've missed?
Nothing that sticks out to me. The last line, I think, to me,
Then this is when people began to invoke the name of the Lord.
Did we already cover that?
You mentioned it. Yeah,
but
this is the beginning of religion.
God doesn't reveal God's name.
Oh, no, you haven't talked about
sorry.
this.
God doesn't reveal God's name until God tells Moses.
Yeah, later in the Bible, God's name will be revealed as if for the first time. But here's a hint that at least some people already know.
Prior to God telling everybody what God's name
well, God
is.
told people at different times. God told Cain's descendants generations ago, but
So maybe
God's not
it
going to tell
got
Moses
lost
until later.
w-
Maybe people forget things.
Yeah.
It happens. It's not that crazy. Well, thank you. Thank you especially to our producer, Nick Mandog Smith. Thank you to our executive producer, Jay Kennedy. And a huge thank you to all of you for listening and supporting the show. We are so grateful for you. Please do remember to rate, review, subscribe, or whatever. If you have questions or suggestions for future topics, you can send them to Unholy Bible Study Podcast at gmail.com. If you have comments, you can send them there too. We'd love to hear from you. Next week, what are we talking about?
Are we doing the cleansing of the temple?
Yes, that's what you said.
The turning over of the tables.
Yeah, we'll continue our reflections on sacrifice.
Jesus got pissed off.
Really angry, apparently.
Yeah.
But maybe not quite as angry as Cain. So that's what we're talking about next week as we move toward the end of this mini-series. And now we're probably going to keep talking about this, but you don't have to keep listening.